back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, as you've seen there, Senator Ibn Allah joins us this morning. He's a former chairman, Senate Committee on Air Force, and former Senate Deputy Majority Leader for the 9th Assembly. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, and good morning, viewers.
Well, let's get your thought first and foremost on this travel ban, this policy. Well, it's not a ban, but some sort of restriction. He slashed it by 60%. The entourage that needs to go with the presidential team, even that of the First Lady as well, also there. But, of course, you'll expect people to respond to these things differently. How does it come across to you?
Well, if you look at the budget of the Federation and you look at line item that has to do with foreign trips and payment to foreign organizations, you will know that the amount is humongous enough. So if we cut 60% of it, I think it's a reasonable saving for the country. What it means is that we must begin as a country to prioritize those areas that we believe are directly beneficial to the country and then to its people before we get involved in spending their resources to attend those meetings abroad. So that's a welcome development. The only disturbing aspect is, I hope it's not correct, when the president opted, maybe out of his concern for Nigerians, to say that if he is traveling to states, the security agents in that state will be vested with the responsibility of his security. Nigeria is 200 million, the biggest black Africa, so the president of that country has an established procedure for protecting him, and it's not within his province to determine how he's going to be protected. It is the collective will of the 200 million Nigerians that have put a structure in place for the purpose of protection of that president. So cost is not of essence when it comes to protecting the president of a country. And he himself is not put in a position to determine how he's going to be protected. So I think that is one area that I feel, if it's true, Mr. President has not been properly advised. That area, he doesn't have jurisdiction. It's entirely vested with the people who have responsibility to do that job.
Even they can do it within reason. Let's put it that way. They can do it within reason. That's what a lot of Nigerians will think, because if Nigerians are the ones themselves voicing that the president's entourage is long, the security convoy is long, if they're the ones, if the Nigerian people are the ones voicing, then don't you think that the security needs to take a second look at how they go about it?
No, let us not mix these issues. The entourage is different from the convoy. If the president is traveling to your state, we have made it a convention. The commissioners from that state, any other person holding political position from that state, the governors, ambassadors, they all want to be there. What is it to renew, this idea of Mr. President has not seen me for long, let me just be available. And that's why the culture of lining up on his plane comes about, so that he sees you, exchange boundaries and rest. So let us not confuse the two. What I mean is that the directive that says if I'm going to Oyo, I will take very limited number of security people from Abuja to follow me to Oyo, and now it has become the responsibility of the security agents in Oyo to take care of my security. That's what I'm saying. It's not done anywhere. And it's not within his province to say so. And I'm sure I will be proved right by the various security agencies who are charged with this responsibility. Because
if I thought they will speak.
Well, they can't speak, but but I'm sure they will go back to him and tell him, Mr. President, we can't do that. You see, when it comes to the security of the president and the first family, he doesn't have any say. Otherwise, left to him, the president would like to come out in the evening and jog, maybe on the street, but the security will say you can't do that. He would like to go to some places and the security will say you can't do that, because it's their responsibility to protect the president and members of his immediate family. I think I am a bit knowledgeable on this issue, having come from the documents I have had privilege to see when we were doing the Oputa panel, when Mustafa was the chief security officer to late General Sani Abacha. So I don't want to talk much about that, but I believe it's an area where I honestly believe he has not been properly advised.
So while I, as a Nigerian, I can understand what it is that you're saying, and also given the examples that we've seen from other countries, you know, just how a president just has to be protected. That's the priority of the security agencies. He's their commander-in-chief. He's number one. But even at that, sometimes when you see, let's not even talk about the president going to a state. Let's talk about the president even using Eagle Square. The level of security that we see in the square, the amount of security personnel you see at the square, the ones are in front of him clearing the way, the ones that are behind him.
And like I have said, anybody vested with responsibility of being a governor or a president should know that he should run the country or the state in such a manner that he is running his own family. Those wastages that he cannot do if he is left alone to run his own family, he should not be seen to be doing them simply because he has the privilege of being put in a position to superintend over the affairs of a state or the country. So Nigeria has a lot of wastages that we all know, and I believe that we all know this, and it's just a matter of identifying and atomizing them, and then coming out with policies that will make them unfashionable, just for the purpose of making sure that we are beginning to rediscover ourselves and act in accordance with what we have now, not what we were used to having before.
All right, Chamberlain, just find out from you. Moving forward, just before that though, so how do you suggest this be remedied, if that were the case then?
Well, the kind of governance that we run in Nigeria has given the president a lot of privileges, some rights, and then some unwritten, let me put it, some unwritten influence. So I think first is invite all the governors, sit in a closed-door meeting, and then draw the line of irreducible minimum in the affairs of governance of this country. Draw all your appointees into one room, and then tell them, this is what we have agreed to do, and no one is allowed to cross the line. When he begins to do things along this line, I think it's easier than direct intervention to say, I, Mr. President, have directed that this cannot be done. Like I have said, he can do that with his appointees, but he has little legal and constitutional ability to influence the state. But he can, on moral ground, you know, bring those who are vested with the responsibility of being governors, being appointees of governors, put them in a room, and then let them draw the irreducible minimum. What was it that we were doing wrong? How can we do it better? Where are we doing wastages? How can we block these wastages? What do we channel these wastages to? And all these things are there. And I'm sure when we do that, the country will begin to have some level of not only renewed hope, but hope.
Do you think that he has to, don't you think that even they, looking at what the president has done, can simply just toe the line? Isn't that supposed to be leadership?
That is supposed to, under an ideal situation, yes. Under an ideal situation, yes. But I'm so sorry, maybe to sound comical, some people might just have been interested in becoming governors simply because they are happy being chiefing, driving around with those kind of convoys, emphasizing to them how important they are in the society. That may be the one reason, among other reasons, as to why they want to be on a comical. But like I have said, where we are now as a country, we have reached a stage where we must stop and ask ourselves whether what we are doing is correct, whether it's in the best interest of the people that elected us to govern, and whether the future of this country, for example, can be sustained using those kind of how do I put it, behaviors.
But do you get a sense that the NSA was consulted with it before this came through?
The NSA was concerned. No, but the NSA, the National Security Advisor, I don't know why people emphasize so much about it. The National Security Advisor's role has nothing whatsoever to do
with the president.
With the protection of the president. It has nothing to do with that. What the National Security Advisor's role is to look at the entire country, its complexities, and look at the various reports coming from the different corners of the country and say, Mr. President, there is this problem here, and I believe that if we do this, we can nip it in the bud, and then we can prevent it in future from happening by taking these steps, that step, or that step. Right. That is the role.
Okay, but let me just read this, as you might have seen on the ticker there at the moment. The Adamawa Social Democratic Party's governorship candidate, Umar Ado, has withdrawn his appeal before the Supreme Court against Governor Amadu Fintiri of Adamawa State. Remember that matter? It's coming up this morning. We did bring that to you earlier on, that this case, Adamawa State, and that of Abia, were scheduled to be heard today. Excuse me, but as you have seen the news developing, I tell you the twists to this particular matter, which we will bring you as we progress. So just stay here with us. We will bring you all of that in a moment. Well, back to you now, Senator. Some days ago, the president, in fact, several people have been asking questions about palliatives that were supposed to get to constituents through their members in the National Assembly. And there were images circulating in different parts that some members had done that to their constituents, and others now began asking, oh, wait a minute, if some have done it, why can't C, D, and E also do it? And then the information came through that there were some bottlenecks concerning all of that. So how do these things usually work, though? Okay,
Chamberlain, if, let's say, you give me a bag of rice, a truck of bag of rice to take delivery in Abuja and distribute in Kebbi, and then you give the Nasarawa senator who is from Kefi here the same truck to distribute in Kefi, will they be able to to distribute on the same day? The answer is no. So logistics problem might be the problem that they are encountering, and they may not be able to have control over the logistic issues. This is one area, again, Chamberlain, that I think the federal government needs to be a little bit careful. Constitutionally, I'm not so sure it will be the responsibility of Mr. President to take palliatives, for example, to my constituency. It's not, because he is running a federal budget based on the Constitution. The monies that are accruable to the state, he has given to the state. And of course, those to local government have been given to local government. So if the president, again, can bring governors and maybe, how do I sermonize them to them that, look, why can't we for once free local governments, give them their money? State, take your money.
Who is to do that? Senate, National Assembly, or the governors?
The president. The Constitution has already made provision for that, but we know that that is not the practice. But the president, in his fatherly role, being the #1 citizen of the country, can put the governors in a conference room and say, look, where we were coming from, we all know what we are doing is wrong.
I thought the last AGF tried it, but they rejected it.
Forget about the AGF. I'm talking about the president. I'm telling you, this issue has more to do with moral persuasion than legal pursuit.
You don't say.
Yes. So, as the father of the nation, he needs to continuously bring this kind of people.
Do you appeal to them to obey the law?
Yeah, because we all know that that is not the situation. But he is trying to reform the country. He is trying to leave a legacy that he will be happy about. So he has to go extra mile to do those things that the Constitution does not even anticipate. And that's what I said is supposed to be more of moral persuasion than legal pursuit. So the Attorney General of the Federation cannot succeed in that. It's the president that should get involved in that, and of course some of his appointees.
We've got Mr. Shittu, former Attorney General for Oyo State and former Minister of communication.
And my brother too.
Oh, okay, good. So,
even though he has abandoned me.
But no comradeship at this moment in time. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program here today. So let's just get a few things. I mean, we'll also have some communication questions as well as you proceed. But in the meantime, give us your impression. This travel directive, this policy of the president, how do you expect it to be operationalized? Because there are questions. I mean, Senator here has raised concerns about what he thinks of at least the security aspects of it. But from your view, having been a minister as well, what do you think of this?
Are you talking of the policy?
The travel ban, yeah, the travel policy.
Well, honestly, it is a wonderful decision of Mr. President. Let me say, with all due respect to Mr. President, that a few weeks ago, about 10 days ago, he was in Lagos, you know, and he went for Jumat prayers. And if you saw the itinerary, it was simply disgusting because there were far too many people on the itinerary. And people started asking questions, and you know that they were really embarrassed. So, and with, you know, regard to other lesser, you know, or public officers, you see all kinds of and manners of itinerary, of convoy. So Mr. President, in the Renew Hope agenda, decided that things must be done differently. And then he brought in this new policy, which is very welcome and which has been accepted by the generality of Nigerians as a right, you know, action in the right direction.
In other words, you disagree. Does that then mean you disagree with Senator here who thinks in the area of the security, he's got no say in the matter, so it's not up to him to determine how he's protected?
Well, if you are talking of security, when there are too many crowds following Mr. President, you never cannot guarantee that you will know everybody's identity, you know, with the view of ensuring adequate security.
No, what I mean is, Senator thinks that the president doesn't have a say on how he should be protected by, if that's true, reducing the amount of security personnel that go with him from his location, his base, to other states where they're required to provide security from that state, whichever state is in question.
Look, it is still the officers of the federal government, whether they're in the states or wherever they may be. You talk of the police, you talk of members of the armed forces, you talk of, you know, the SSS. They are all federal officials. So nobody can say that because a policeman is posted to, say, Oyo State, so the president does not have a say on what happens. He's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and indeed, by extension of the police and other security apparatus.
Senator,
it cuts costs because...
This is not the position. The position is there as specially trained to do that job. It's a special training. We call it VIP protection. And I'm telling you, it's not every person that can do that kind of job. It has its own ethics. It has its own do's and don'ts. And so it is all over the world. So Nigeria cannot be an exception. And like I've said, and I want to be proved wrong, and I still maintain that the president has no hand whatsoever in determining how he's going to be protected. It is Nigerians who love their president, who know the enormity of the office he holds, who went ahead to provide money for the training of people to specifically protect Mr. President.
So, Mr. Shittu, I mean, you're a lawyer. How come you then didn't see this?
Mr. President has given himself just not more than 25 people. You mean the ordinary Nigerian you are talking of who know, you know, the security issues better than Mr. President? Mr. President is the one who has all the information at his disposal. And I want to argue that whatever he decides, he would have done that in the best interest of Nigeria generally, because he has better information than the rest of us.
In any case... sorry, Mr. Shittu, good morning, sir. Are you implying that the 25 also includes security personnel? Some people will think not.
Well, I want to believe that like I said, Mr. President has the best information, and he takes the right decision.
Let me give you a scenario. Let me give you a scenario. President Obasanjo started this and said he never wanted to be using presidential plane to travel out of the country. I think he was on a trip to London. They did whatever was humanly possible to get seat for just 11 people, I think, or thereabout, on BA. BA have their policies. They say we don't have seat for this kind of people. And there was no arrangement for him to depart on that day, so he had to go with BA. He can tell you he's still alive. He can tell you what happened to him. And I'll give you the second one here. President Buhari was in Birnin Kebbi. He was to commission something in Argungu War Court. He went with limited security. There are those who should be looking after his aeroplane. Then some people had to go to Argungu War Court place to provide security. And when Mr. President left the place, some governors decided that they wanted a picture with the president. And then he didn't wait for the security to give him clearance. He came down. You saw what happened. Somebody went with a dagger or something, which was explained later. So let me tell you something. There is nothing you can do about security of president of a country of 200 million Nigerians. He cannot determine how he's going to be protected. And I'm telling you this with all seriousness. As far as that policy is concerned, it's well accepted by Nigerians, it's good, it's going to bring a saving, but please, don't go into the area of securing our president. We need our president, we elected him, we want him to sit down and do the work of a president and want him to be protected enough for the purpose of rendering that service.
Well, I know that... yes, Mr. Shittu, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying that members of officials in the presidency, I hope they are listening to this and will be able to, take appropriate lessons, from this discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so you tell us, you have been a minister before, and you can maybe give us some insights into how ministers decide, because the president hasn't just made this rule for himself and, those around him, the vice president. He's also made rules for ministers and also heads of agencies as well, who cannot travel with more than 2 people. Usually, how are these determined? How are we going above numbers that seemed reasonable before now?
Well, maybe the Nigerian factor has always been in play. The Nigerian factor, you know what that means. It means, compromises. The Nigerian factor means indiscipline. The Nigerian factor means everybody wanting to take advantage of situations. Every minister has, a security team that is protecting him. And they decide, in fact, the idea of how many people go with a minister does not even, the decision does not come to the minister. The minister just does his own job, and the security does their own job. So I cannot remember that there was ever a time that I had to decide who follows me or who protects me or not. It was the business of the, people, the security people, particularly the DSS officials protecting me then.
Yes, but so, while the DSS, you might not have had control over security, and I think that it will be very interesting to speak, if ever they will speak, or to the DSS, how they determine or how they come about the figures, because we always see that at least 2 truckloads, from what I have seen as a journalist, at least 2 truckloads of security personnel escorts the minister. But I'm sure that you must have, control over your aides, your personal aides, and I want to believe that the president's directive is targeted more towards aides, whom they have control over. So even if you do not have control over your security, I want to imagine that your aides, then you must have had some control. Did you ever have a situation whereby you said, no, I'm going to so and so place and only 2 people can follow me?
No. I never had a situation where more than 2-3 people had to follow me to, events, except where, if it was in Abuja, where, the office is, of course, everybody in the ministry would most likely be there. But apart from that, only relevant officers, with regard to what one is going to do in the state, would be there with you.
Were you specific on that? I'm sure. Well, I don't know about. I know that with benefit of hindsight now, you might say, "Oh, I was modest." But did you ever have cause to look at any of your colleagues and say, what does he need this number of people, or what does he or she? Well, because they're mostly men in your government. What did he or she need this number of people for?
No, I never had cause to, make any such observation. I never had cause.
So you think that your colleagues were modest as well?
Well, I don't know. I know that. I don't follow my colleagues.
Shittu is my friend. He's a comrade person. I know him very well. So don't go there. If you use his standard, certainly we will fall below what we are expecting. Shittu can work alone, even as a minister. He knows I know. He's my very good friend and brother. But let me tell you something. You should ask this question. Protocol-wise,
yes.
A senator comes before a minister. A member of House of Representatives comes before a minister. But you should ask yourself, why are they not having that kind of security given to them?
The senators?
Yes.
And protocol officials.
Yeah.
So now that we know that senators don't have it,
they don't, except the Senate President and the Deputy Senate President. They don't. I was Deputy Senate leader, and I know I didn't have security. So look,
you didn't have security, not even one police.
Why do I need it? So I have this concept that only sinners run away when they are pursued by no one. So I drove myself to this place now.
The president, the sinner.
No. The office of the president, provided by the Constitution, is you have made that provision. But I'm talking about lesser people, like people who ordinarily are just occupying little offices where they are just supposed to render services and go.
Like minister?
Yeah. What's there in being a minister? There is nothing extraordinary about being a minister. You are given a responsibility to perform based on the mandate of your ministry. What makes you so special? Because you are given contract, and therefore you want to take away people who will struggle to see you for the purpose of getting those favors. That's the only thing. Otherwise, what is so special about? We have minister. Let me tell you, I was in Canada with Senator Tambuwal. We went to see the foreign affairs minister to negotiate visa arrangement for Nigeria. When the man came, I honestly thought he was the clerk of that ministry.
Wow.
Honestly. And we sat with him and he said he's the minister. And then we discussed. We went for lunch together, 3 of us. And then we came back to his office, and then he gave us, and then we left. You can't see that even if it's a minister for firewood in Nigeria. It doesn't work.
But isn't it what National Assembly should enforce?
You don't understand.
Please make us understand.
Thank you very much. You see, this idea of separation of powers at times is interpreted to its extreme when it wants to favor some people, and then restrictively interpreted when it wants to favor. The executive doesn't want to hear anything from National Assembly when it relates to issues of that nature. They don't want to hear. I'm telling you this one. So it's a futile attempt, to try to say the National Assembly will say a minister should not carry this. It doesn't work that way. So it's like I have said, the constitutional arrangement takes that responsibility direct to the person appointing the ministers. All that is required by the National Assembly to do is that the Constitution say President must appoint ministers from each of the 36 states of the Federation. So, and then this is the qualification to be a minister. And then the National Assembly will say, okay, you have appointed Chamberlain from this. Okay, Chamberlain, you went to school, yes. Okay, are you from that state? Yes. Okay, look at your qualification. Yes, everything is all right. Okay, fine. Then you
bow and go.
Then in fact, that's why at times the bow and go issue comes about, because you have virtually the role that you are supposed to play.
It becomes rubber stamp.
Exactly. Well, I don't want to use that word.
No, you said exactly.
No. I enter a plea of not guilty to that charge.
Talking about security, and I know that we've talked about how the president doesn't have any say in terms of how he is protected. But I also want to, because right now, I think that we might need some clarity on whether or not the president was referring to just aides. He's also spoken about heads of agencies.
Yeah.
For instance, and by heads of agencies, I also imagine he's talking about security and para-security agencies. For instance, Federal Fire Service.
Yes.
Have you seen the official of the chief
with siren, with everything. Civil defense, the same thing. Immigration. At times I ask myself, I say, can't we get people who can perform the function of this office without this paraphernalia?
So you've seen it?
Yeah. So that's it. But the issue is they are everywhere, blaring siren. If you appoint a minister today, or immigration official, the next morning there is a brand new Hilux he bought with light and everything, and then the only people who don't have it is because they don't have federal allocation are the Boy Scouts.
No, but I mean, shouldn't it also extend them? Because a lot of Nigerians are wondering.
There is no need. There is no. In which country have you seen that happen? You've traveled all over. Where have you seen that happen? This is peculiar to Nigeria, and that the only way the man can show that I'm so important, the president has made me so important, is to sit. And then the one funny thing is that the next day he's not there. You understand? Then he becomes empty. So it's just unfortunate. Let us encourage Mr. President to pursue this policy. It's a very good policy. Let Nigerians give him all the backing he requires as far as this issue is concerned, and even further go beyond that to look at areas of wastages and see how we can block them.
So let me just confirm from you. Let me just confirm from you that you think that that is outrageous, because you have defended the president that he doesn't have a say in terms of how he's protected.
Yes.
So if those people also say, well, the chief officers and those agencies do not have a say in terms of how they're protected, what do we say to that?
They are appointees of the president. One directive. If a directive can take the control of immigration out of office today, can take the control of custom out of today, what makes you think a directive not to allow him to use that kind of paraphernalia will last for 5 minutes? Please forget about, let's make distinction. We are talking about serious issue. These are appointees of Mr. President. He has every right to determine how they function, how they live in the society. He can draw rules of procedure for them. He can do everything he wants as far as he's concerned, how he wants them to look like. But I still maintain, not in Nigeria, not anywhere, where the president has been given the privilege of determining how he is to be protected. Not anywhere.
Ayo.
Well, thank you, Chimele. Let me quickly follow up on what the conversation you're having with the senator. You know, you stated something the other time, and I'd like you to expatiate a little further on it. You talked about the protocol and the logistics around the president. Are there rules that Nigerians are not aware of, upon which you are premising your position that the president does not have a say in how he is protected? Are there some rules, some protocol rules, some law, some regulations that your position is based on for the president or for anyone at that?
Enough to be able to speak the truth. If I know that the president has a right to determine how he is protected, I will have gladly say so. But it will be unhelpful and uncharitable for me to look at Mr. President and ascribe to him a power which I know he does not have. 200 million Nigerians elected him, gave him a house. We know he has a family, and we said to comfort him to be able to perform the function of the president under the Constitution, he must never go to bed believing that something can happen to him. And therefore, whatever it takes to protect him and his immediate family, to give him that comfort, we must put it in place. And that is why a humongous amount is being budgeted to train people specifically for that purpose. And that cost is called VIP protection. And I'm telling you, not every policeman is trained like that. Not every SSS man is trained like that. Not every soldier is trained along that line. So let us just accept that fact, that these people have a specific function, they have been specifically trained for that function, and therefore they determine how to do it, not any other person. Because let me tell you the danger of allowing the president to determine how he's going to be protected. Should anything happen to, God forbid, and I say God forbid again, who will take responsibility? Nobody will take responsibility. But now, if a fly touches Mr. President and Mr. President is not happy, we have every reason to call those who are in charge with the responsibility of making sure that a fly does not touch him and to call them to question. Please, this country has gone beyond where we say whatever Mr. President has done is correct. No. When we see what he has done that is correct, we give him all the backing to be able to succeed. When we see him overstepping his limit, we say, Mr. President, this is where the red line is, please don't cross it. And that is the only way that we can help him as a person. not by saying that he possessed the power of...
no, I wasn't asking you, Senator, my apologies, I wasn't asking really about the powers of the president. I'm asking whether there are rules around the intelligence community, or the protocols around him.
Those rules are there. They are with the intelligence community. That's why they have to pick some people. Let me tell you, some of this VIP protection are choosing right from training. They look at your institutional behavior. They look at your capacity. They look at your respect for time and everything. They look at how diligent you are. And then you are selected. Then you are put in a course somewhere and so in several other places. How to act, when to act, in respect of protecting a VIP. Mr. President has not gone through that training, Mr. Ayo.
Okay.
So if he has not gone through that training, where does he drive the wisdom to determine how he's going to be protected? Please, let us make this issue. It's not a debatable issue.
Interestingly,
yes, it's not a debatable issue. It's a security issue. It's not something I can come on the television and tell you,
Yeah, interestingly, you also said he's the commander-in-chief. Well, isn't that supposed to be implied? Don't answer that one. Let me ask you...
no, commander-in-chief.
Let me ask, Chief Shittu, this question about the NCC barring one network from, based on, interconnect costs and all of that. You've been Minister of Communication before. Now, that statement from the NCC that one network, the customers from one network will be barred from calling another network due to non-settlement of interconnect charges. Is this something that is coming to us for the very first time? Because, I mean, having been in the ICT sector, reporting that sector for a while, I've also seen that occasionally these conversations happen, but then they have their way of meeting. As a matter of fact, they have an association where they all belong to. So what do you read, Mr. Shittu, that is happening based on the comment from the NCC?
Number one, I have not had any comment from the NCC in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I don't really know what you are talking about. But I want to say, having said that, I want to also now say that the people in NCC are trained in communications regulations issues. And whether it happened before or not at any point in time, if they think, particularly in consultation with operators of telecommunications in the country, if they think that that is the right way to go, under the law, they have a right to impose any regulations or restrictions. I have emphasized again that people in NCC are well trained in regulating telecommunications. And that is why it is Nigerian Communications Commission. So I don't have any new information, from NCC. And so I may not be in a position to really give, substantial critique or analysis of the said new regulations.
Well, we could leave it at that, but just to inform you and perhaps a number of other people who may not be aware that the statement by the NCC Director of Public Affairs Department, Ruben Morka, says Globacom was notified of the application made by MTN and was given the opportunity to comment and state its case. The Commission, having examined the application and circumstances surrounding the indebtedness, determined that Globacom does not have sufficient or justifiable reason for non-payment of the interconnect charges. According to him, once the notice expires, subscribers of Globacom will no longer be able to make calls to MTN, but to be able to receive calls. That's the basis of this question.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. Of course, if Globacom, with due respect to them, refuse to pay interconnect charges, I mean, then it means they are not paying for services being rendered to their customers. So that makes sense. And I believe that once Globacom starts paying or resumes payment for interconnect charges, then they will be fixed back to MTN, services. So it makes sense, honestly.
But do you see any issues arising from that angle? Because this is one. And there could be many other underlying issues, particularly at a time when the Globacom, for instance, is saying that they are not owing any money. Do you see all of these? How do you see it all being resolved in a way that it's amicable across board?
We're under the mediation of NCC. I think the two parties should sit down on a round table and look at the books and be able to, say, what are, the costs which are supposed to be outstanding. I mean, if Globacom feels that it's not owing, they must have evidence of payments for services already rendered. Certainly, I know that Globacom cannot afford to be cut off from MTN, because my thinking is MTN has more customers than, Globacom. So if Globacom's customers don't have Globacom, lines, if most of the people, their customers will want to call are not on Globacom line, then they will be frustrated. And if customers of Globacom are frustrated, certainly they will want to port to other, telecom services. So I believe it is in the interest of Globacom to do the needful as soon as possible, and not to adopt, a combative posture on this matter. That is my submission.
All right, just hang on a minute, gentlemen and lady. We've got Mr. Umar Ardo, the governorship candidate of the Social Democratic Party for Adamawa. So remember, we did bring you some news that he had withdrawn his case, his appeal against the Adamawa State Governor at the Supreme Court. So a lot had tried to find out what was going on, given his previous stance. So he joins us on the line now to give us to shed some light on why that news came through. Good morning, Mr. Ardo. Thank you for joining us on the program today. So could you tell us, why did you withdraw your case?
Okay, thank you very much, Chamberlain. Actually, it's Dr. Ardo. I would like to keep my doctor.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Now, as I told you, you are the first to tell me that my case have been withdrawn. I didn't know. I spoke with my lawyers in the morning, and though I didn't get the senior counsel, but I texted him a good luck around 9 something in the morning, and then maybe about 50 minutes or so later, he then called me and said that my case, I told you, I didn't know. So, but the lawyers called me and they just briefed me, and they told me what transpired in court. There were 2 cases. One, that of the cross appeal of the governor, and then my own appeal. So the court started with the cross appeal, and from what my lawyers briefed me is that the court was telling the cross appellant that they didn't know what they were saying. So, but still the court said, however, when we treat the next case, the main appeal, it will affect you. And so my case was called, and appearances were made, and then the court started asking, questions, that were not in congruence, with what they should. But anyway, the court, insisted that our lawyers must make an application. And in the jargon of the law, of the court processes, when the court the judge at the bench tells you at the bar, the lawyer, that make the application, that the implication is that you should just withdraw. And so my lawyer now made an application and withdrew. I did not know. It was my case. This is the second time the Supreme Court is doing that, to me. The first time was in 2014, in the case that I took against President Goodluck Jonathan for contesting for 2015 elections. Now, in the case of the 5 PDP governors, the Supreme Court, led by then Justice Onoge, the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, made a judgment and said that no governor and president shall remain in office for a cumulative period exceeding 8 years. For a cumulative period exceeding 8 years. And that they said these 8 years like Justice Onoge put it, is like the rock of Gibraltar. It cannot be moved, not for a day. Jonathan Chen, PDP gave him nomination to contest election for another term. By then, if Jonathan had contested, President Jonathan had contested and won, he would have been in office for 9 years, 23 days, because he already had 5 years, 23 days to his credit as the president. The Supreme Court said no president of Gozo can remain in office for a cumulative period exceeding 8 years. So if Jonathan contested, Jonathan would have exceeded the 8 years. So I went to court. Other than all the issues of preliminary objections and this and that, you know, we at the end of the day, we were at the Supreme Court. For 42 minutes, the Supreme Court was insisting, withdraw. Because the truth is that the Supreme Court cannot give another judgment that will not conflict with its earlier judgment that no governor and president can remain in office for a cumulative period exceeding 8 years. So the only way is withdraw. But the same thing also happened today. Withdraw. Although the court, to be fair, did not open its mouth, he said, but that the court and the bar, they are one and the same thing. They said, make the application. So our lawyers made the application. Now, I spent a lot of money in this state. I spent a lot of money in the politics. I spent a lot of money in going to court, from tribunal to the Supreme Court. But it seems that I, as Dr. Ardo, I don't have court to go to. Not that I don't have a case. My case in the Supreme Court, which they force a withdrawal, you cannot beat it.
So Dr. Ado, you don't feel justice has been served, and so you're angry at this?
What are you talking about? There is a miscarriage of justice against me. There's a huge miscarriage of justice against me. The Supreme Court is telling me for the second time that I don't have a court to go to. Whatever it is, let the court determine the matter on the merits. Everything is before it.
Dr. Ador, it is interesting that you say this.
Let me tell you another interesting thing.
Just before you do that, sir, I'm really seeking clarification on this, because you say the Supreme Court has miscarried justice against you. When the Supreme Court hasn't said a thing in your case, it is your own lawyers who have withdrawn your case from the Supreme Court.
Well, the lawyers saw according to their briefing, saw the body language of the court. The court came with very strong body language, trying to move, on one direction. The court even brought an issue that is not in contention, issue of number of votes. The issue of number of votes is not in contention in my appeal. My appeal is that based on section 24, is it 24, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that right. If these things happen, you must, the law says you should notify it. And the law empowers the candidate, any candidate, to go to court.
All right, Dr. Ado, well, we'll keep tabs with this matter and get to hear a lot more on this as it does progress. But we do thank you for talking to us this morning on this matter. So clearly he's not happy with how this has played out. And were you surprised too?
Well, I don't know. As a lawyer, I'm not sure a court has body language.
Okay. All right, there you go. So thank you as well, Senator Bala, who is a former chairman of the Senate Committee on Air Force and former Senate Deputy Majority Leader. We also have to thank you, Mr. Shittu, former Attorney General for Oyo State and former Minister for Communications. Thank you all for your time here today.
And ask him whether he's still my former friend or he's still my friend.
Well, I guess
of course, Bala, you remain my very good friend.
Thank you.
I respect you and I like your audacity.
Thank you.
You are always welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shittu.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
I'm wishing you a very productive day ahead. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
We got all your messages on X, but then thank you so much and keep the conversation going. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.